Libyan state TV reports 8 NATO strikes on the capital Tripoli have left numerous civilians injured. Here are the latest pictures for you now from the capital, where smoke is rising above the buildings following the attack. Local media claims one of the coalition bombs hit the residence of Colonel Gaddafi. Meanwhile, NATO officials have announced plans to continue their operation until Libyan forces stop attacking civilians and retreat. At today's meeting in Berlin, members of the alliance discussed what contribution each state needs to make, with only 6 out of the 28 involved conducting airstrikes. The UK and France have been calling on other countries to increase military pressure on Colonel Gaddafi. Well, we can now cross to former CIA counterterrorism analyst Michael Scheuer to hear his take on the NATO operation there in Libya. Thanks so much for joining us live there on RT. Now, at that meeting in Berlin, Hillary Clinton said that Colonel Gaddafi is testing our determination. And of course, we're hearing about growing disagreements inside the alliance. Why do you think Gaddafi is proving to be such a tough challenge?
Well, Gaddafi knows what he's doing, and he also knows that the West is utterly feckless, that it really doesn't have any determination to get rid of him. And as soon as we kill a few civilians, which will be inevitable in the bombing by NATO, the alliance will fall apart and they'll make a peace with Gaddafi. I think that's what he believes.
What do you mean by the West is not determined to get rid of him? What do you mean by that?
Well, it doesn't take a lot of common sense to see that air power has done about all it can do. For the last week or so, they've continued to attack, and the Gaddafi's forces keep moving forward toward the resistance. At the end of the day, there's no way to get rid of Gaddafi unless you put ground troops into Libya. And I don't think the West is going to do that, and I think Gaddafi knows it. And so he's planning just to hang on.
Has the US got ground troops there in Libya at the moment?
We certainly probably have special forces and CIA officers who are trying to figure out who the resistance is, but also preparing landing strips and other areas of concentration in case the West decides to put troops in there. Part of the mission clearly is to get ready for an influx of troops.
Do you not think, though, that despite, as you're saying, probably there could be CIA agents there, that what we are seeing, though, is that the US in some ways is distancing itself, isn't it, from this campaign by making NATO lead the role in the military campaign? I mean, why do you think it is, in effect, distancing itself? Is that because it's worried what's going to happen next?
Well, I think they're distancing themselves because it didn't go quickly as they hoped it would. Second, America's troops and intelligence forces are already spread out to the breaking point and don't have many reserves. And third, Obama started a war for which he didn't have permission. So there's no way the public is going to let him put ground troops in. But I think he's also fooling himself, at least in the Muslim world, because no matter how much we say NATO is in charge of this, NATO can't put its shoes on without United States help. And so in the Muslim world, this still appears to be a U.S. operation disguised to look like NATO. But it's, again, the United States bombing a Muslim country that has oil.
Some would say, well, you mention oil there, an intention there, but some would say that the U.S. has an agenda. It's got a policy behind not only Libya, but also the other events happening throughout the Middle East. But surely what we're seeing in Libya is people power talking. People are preparing to lose their lives, to change a regime, to get rid of Gaddafi. Isn't that democracy in the making? And therefore, the US and its allies should be supporting that.
No, I certainly don't think the U.S. should be supporting democracy anywhere in the world, or tyranny for that matter. If people can win their own freedom and their own democracy, let them do it. But I don't think we need to be involved in it. I think it's self-defeating. And I also think the Western media has been ridiculously juvenile, in the sense that they talk to a few Arabs who can speak English, and they read a few Arabs who have written in English on Facebook and Twitter, and they extrapolate that to the whole Muslim world and say democracy's on the march. Democracy is not on the march in the Muslim world. There is a desire to overthrow the tyrants that have governed the Arab world, but the Arab world is moving toward Islam. It is not moving toward democracy.
But so what you're saying is that we see a regime topple, that creates a vacuum, but then we see Islamic fundamentalism taking its place. But isn't that exactly the reason why you need to have foreign intervention to prevent that from happening?
Well, how can you prevent that from happening? I think that would be my question. We have no troops left. You can only do that by force. And as soon as you leave, as we're going to see in Iraq and Afghanistan, as soon as the Americans leave from those two places, the Islamists very simply come back into power or into the position of governing the country. So unless you're going to stay in these countries forever, it's really a pointless activity, sir.
Just briefly, Michael, I mean, from your capacity as a former CIA counter-terrorism analyst, the talk of Al-Qaeda, for example, infiltrating the ranks of the rebels in Libya, the other unrest we're seeing, are we seeing now, how you see the actual foreign intervention occurring here, are we seeing this as promoting terrorism, as creating these areas as breeding grounds of further terrorist threats around the world? I mean, what's your view as a counterterrorism expert on the results of all of this?
I think the end of the tyrannies in the Middle East are creating an environment in which Islamist groups, whether it's Al-Qaeda or any of its allies, will be able to operate much more easily and with much less pressure from security services. The successor governments aren't going to be as effective, and they're going to be more Islamic. I don't think they're going to be fundamentalists. They're not really. We're not really worried about Al-Qaeda taking over any particular government. But we're going to have a situation where operationally it's much easier for these groups to exist, to train, and to plan. And Mrs. Clinton is really a fantasist. She really believes somehow that this is going to be a secular democratic revolution, and it's as far away from that as it possibly could be.
Really good to talk to you. Interesting to hear your point of view. Michael Scheuer, former CIA counterterrorism analyst, joining us there in Washington. Thank you for your time.